I grew up in a very small town. It was the kind where everyone knew who was who and what they'd been up to. We had an elementary school of our own, a church, a small market, and very basic one-off establishments. Being such a small community, there wasn't much need for vehicles in this town, but most people still had a truck or family vehicle. I had been going to this elementary school for years now, and had never had any issues. I was about midway through this section of schooling by this time and was trusted by my parents to walk home on my own. You'd see other neighbors drive around in the distance, picking up their children, running errands, but no one really paid much attention to anyone else on foot outside, a kind wave now and then. I can't remember how long I'd been walking home from school, on my own at that point, but I was used to it and never faced any issues and people following me or anything like that. It wasn't until the first rain of that season, looking back how cliche is that I had an encounter with anyone else. Ever since I was little, I loved storms. Walking in the rain was almost therapeutic. When most would want to get out of the rain, I'd bask in it. Listening to the thunder and pitter-patter of the rain was calming and made me feel as though I was connected with the rhythm of nature. In place just where I needed to be. I was sucked out from this mental safe haven when a man pulled up in a dirty, rusted old white truck. "Hey son, need a ride?" he asked. I was skeptical. Years of school warnings of how you should never talk to strangers or take candy or get in a car with them replayed like clockwork in my head. "No thanks, I'm fine, I'm walking," I said. "Oh, it's fine son, I know your parents," he tried to reassure me. Something didn't sit right. After he told me that, for knowing my parents, he didn't look familiar. I'd never seen him visit, nor had I seen him around town. "No thanks," I tried again. "I prefer walking." I wasn't far enough from home at this point to need a ride anyway. If he really had known my parents, he wouldn't have asked, he would have known that. "Come on, son, it's pouring cats and dogs out here. Just jump on in and I'll get you home safe and sound." And I glared at him and let out a throaty, "No, have a nice day, sir." To which his eyes widened, probably not expecting such a reaction from a kid my age. He looked offended and raised his window while speeding off down the street. It was at this point that the truck, without stopping for the stop sign, quickly turned to the right, squealing its tires and turning off the street that led out of town, rather than to the residences. Once I got home, I explained the situation to my parents, and they said they'd never seen anyone who matched the description, nor had they seen a truck like that drive around town before. I never saw that guy again after that day, and it's just a creepy memory that's stuck around since I was a kid. I feel like my life might be a span of creepiness, but here's something that happened to my mother and me a few years ago when I was visiting home from college. It was spring break, and I flew down to South Florida to see my mom. One night, I had come home a bit early from hanging out with friends at around midnight. It was raining pretty heavily, and the power had started flickering on and off. So I decided it would be best if I just went to bed since I couldn't watch TV or go online. My mom also decided to go to bed as well, but she's an insomniac, and while trying to fall asleep, she heard noises coming from our backyard. She looked through the blinds, but could only see darkness. She went into my room and woke me up and told me that she thought there was something going on in her backyard. Our backyard is fenced off with a screened patio, which is locked with a screen door. We both went to a window and looked through the blinds, and I could see that these really faint shadows, but it was dark. I decided to flick on the lights to our backyard. As I flipped the switch on and off, I realized the power was totally on, and that meant our alarm system was also disabled. I pressed my ear against the glass while still hiding behind the blinds in my room. I heard a clinking sound that you would hear if you rattled an empty aluminum can with a Coke tab in it. I thought I heard voices, but I couldn't be sure because of the rain. After sitting at the window for a few minutes, my mom and I decided that maybe it was just our imaginations, although neither of us wanted to go outside and check it for sure. "There's probably no one outside," I said to my mom. I could see she was really worried. We are both petite women. We both went to our respective rooms, and a few minutes later I heard a loud bang. The sound was so loud it echoed through the house. Without thinking, I immediately jumped out of bed and ran towards the window that overlooks our backyard. I ran so fast that I slipped into the tile floor. As I came up to the window, I pushed the blinds away, only to see a faint crack on the window that was spreading quickly through the glass. I realized immediately that the glass was cracking and was probably going to shatter. At this point, my mom was at the window with the 2 hurricane flashlights. We shined them through the crack, but it was still intact. We shined them through the cracked, but still intact glass, only to see the patio door swinging wildly outside. But no one was out there. After the storm subsided, we called the cops. We all went to the patio door to inspect it and make sure enough of the lock had been tampered with, and the cops said it looked like there were several people out there by the look of the grass and bushes. The bushes like they were trampled on. As for the glass, the cops said it didn't look like someone hit it with anything, because the glass was cracked in a million pieces, but it didn't shatter. There was also no sign of an impact. After the cops left, my mom and I reasoned that the loud bang could have been the glass snapping because of the pressure change from the storm. Maybe that sound freaked out whoever was trying to break in. Very surreal. This happened when I was 11. I have an older brother who was 16 at the time and 2 younger brothers. My parents would often go out for dinner on a Friday and leave us home alone with some hired videos, pizza, and my brother in charge. My brother would often leave his friend's place down the road on the same street and then leave me in charge. I liked this because I liked being in charge and got to choose the movies. This Friday night, it was stormy and raining on and off. There was some lightning and thunder around. I was watching a movie and my 2 brothers were playing in the carport. It was a large open plan space you can fit 4 cars under. Because my mom and dad were out, you could skateboard and ride a bike and do all sorts of things. So much room for activities. Standing in our carport to the left was a park. We had no neighbors on the side, so you'd often see people using it as a footpath for walking their dogs, riding their bikes, and running into the night as there was some half-decent street lamps dotting along it. If you went out of our driveway, you could go straight into the park. It was a great place to grow up. This night, my brother was the road as usual and had written his friend's number down and left us to it. I was probably into our second movie for the night when my 2 younger brothers ran in and said a man is watching them from the park near our fence. Now, I'd normally think they were playing a joke, but their faces had that different concerned look, so I thought I'd better come have a look. We head back out to the carport, standing in the driveway looking out towards the park. There's no sign of him. There's a lightning flash, and it lights up enough just outside of the carport that we can see the man my brother saw is now standing in our yard watching us. We all screamed, slammed the door and ran to Mom and Dad's room, locked the door, grabbed their phone, ran the cord to the bathroom and locked that door. We called my brother's friend's house. His friend answers and I told him there's a man in our yard. He yells out to my brother and then says we are coming up on their BMX bikes. The wait was probably not even 5 minutes till they arrived, but it felt like ages. When they left, my brother told his friend's parents that they called the police and they came up as well. We came back out of the house when they arrived calling out to us. When they arrived, they said the man was gone. Soon after the police arrived and then another vehicle that went up through the park. It was sort of scary that night. But the police searched our house for us and the yard and the streets and the park. It seemed pretty reassuring at the time. And to me, my big brother was fearless and always looked out for us. Having him back home was just as reassuring as the police being there. My parents arrived home not long after, with 2 police cars at our house and the neighbors in the driveway, and my brother's friend's parents there as well. This was not during the time of mobile phones, So I'm thinking that they were wondering what had happened as they came into our driveway. Probably had their hearts racing. I don't recall hearing the man that was ever found or caught. Years later, when I moved out and my younger brothers took over my room, my dad told me one night my younger brother woke up my mom and dad white as a ghost. Their words were that he said a man woke him up saying, "Hey, boy, are your parents home?" My parents never told any of us that at the time, but the timeline fit with them changing the real big open window fly screen. This happened when I was about 14 years and 5 months old. I was staying in my grandmother's house whilst my parents were on holiday. It was about November 2009, and in the south of England, the weather is normally very wet and cold with lots of storms. A couple of months earlier, I had been in my grandmother's kitchen, which faced the back garden. It had been raining very hard. It was just starting to slowly stop, and it was about 5:30 in the evening. I was cooking dinner for my grandmother, as it was my turn and I had been staying around for a couple of days. I looked out of the window to see if the rain had stopped, and this black figure of a man, about 6 foot tall, walked by. It had his collar of a raincoat that it was wearing up, and I couldn't see the face at all. It was just a black figure. I stood further in the kitchen, scared. It then went out of my view, and I ran to tell my grandmother about it. She said that she had so many experiences of that same thing that she had named it Henry. I was a little shocked about this at first, but I plucked up the courage to continue cooking. That was my very first encounter. Back to that night, I was up in my uncle's old bedroom, which is in the attic. The actual attic was separated into two parts, a mini hallway in between. One room for a bedroom, and the other was an actual attic. Neither had doors on it, though. It was a very stormy night, and the high winds and heavy rain were rampant. This was about 10:30 at night. I heard footsteps up on the stairs, and thinking it was my grandmother checking in on me, I shouted, "Nan!" There was no answer, and this black figure appeared in the doorway, and it looked exactly like Henry, but I wasn't sure. I then screamed, "Nan!" as I was very scared, and it vanished, but I heard footsteps going down the stairs. My grandmother then came into the room wearing a white nightgown. I asked my friend that lived down the road if he had experienced anything like that night, and he did, but with one difference. He had a door, and before the figure appeared, the door opened, and after, it closed. Has anyone had any ideas what this Henry thing might be? Maybe it's just another ghost. And why does it only appear during very rainy weather or storms? These events took place over the summer of 1998 while I lived in Boston. This particular summer was very rainy, and there was quite a bit of flooding. The first experience happened one Saturday night while out with friends. We were traveling west along the Mass Pike during a downpour. I was seated in the back seat when suddenly I saw that the lights from the passing cars had illuminated what appeared to be a man walking on the side of the road. From what I could see, he was an older man and balding. He appeared to be in one of those wife-beater t-shirts and light-colored pants. He was also carrying something. This is the best I can describe him, given that the windows were blurry and there were raindrops everywhere. I mentioned to my friends that this was such a horrible night to get stuck on the side of the road. Interestingly enough, my friends didn't see that man. I kept waiting to see a car stall with its hazard lights on, but we didn't pass anything. I had forgotten about this incident until another night I was driving by myself during a rainstorm on the same highway. What do I happen to catch out of my eye? The same darn man in the same clothes walking up the side of the highway. There was no broken down car on the road either. There was a part of me that was tempted to go back and see if I could find the man, but there was another part of me that had a really bad feeling about this. This was an experience that would go on to repeat itself several more times throughout that summer. This didn't just happen on the Mass Pike either. I had it happen while traveling on 495 and also on Route 2. It did not seem to matter if I had friends with me or not. I seemed to be the only person that saw this man, and he only appeared when it was raining. I don't understand why this is happening. He had no other discernible features other than the ones that I described above. There were no deaths in my family or any other bad experiences that year. I had started to think it was a warning of some sort, but I can't think of what it might have been. To this day, I still have no idea what the purpose of this was, and why I was the only one that was seeing him.